So what I need is the compound effect. So Darren Hardy in his compound effect talks about like, hey, you can have these big dreams, but that big dream, realistically, let's say like that's a year away. What are the 1,000 little things you need to do between now and when that takes off? And the difficult part about this is, and this is definitely true. I know anybody that's in it, like you would know, like with an apartment building, the growth curve is an exponential one. And an exponential growth curve grows very little for so long. It feels like you're making no progress. You're doing all these little things, nothing's happening. You're doing a podcast, you do it for a year, still nobody's listening. You're making all these offers, you're underwriting all these deals, nothing's happening. What you don't realize, and what Darren, Hardy tells you in the comment effect is like, actually you're building up so much momentum. It's almost like a coiled spring or something. Like you're doing all these things, and when it takes off, you get this exponential growth. And that's like when you finally get an apartment building. Like you've done nothing, but then you close on a 100-unit apartment building. Holy smokes, it's like you just bought 100 houses, like all at once, right? So it's like you've done nothing. You've seen no progress, like nothing tangible, and then it takes off. And I think if you want to be successful in real estate, you have to have that mindset.
Hey guys, welcome back to Ask Me How I Know. This podcast is like a unicorn that had to get wrestled down. So you are in for a total treat, and I'm so glad that you're here. This morning I have Lee with me, and it's been a delight already talking with you, and welcome to Ask Me How I Know.
Yeah, Julie, thanks so much for having me. This is a real honor for me.
Oh my. Well, Lee, I've already been devouring and enjoying your podcast. And I'm just going to, if you wouldn't mind just giving a quick little plug for your podcast so people know when you're done with this, just head over there.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's called Threefold Real Estate Investing. And we focus on real estate, obviously, and faith and family. The idea behind it, Julie, we dig into real estate. A lot of my guests are multifamily real estate investors. So it is kind of geared that way. That's what I believe in more than anything else. So we dig into that. We dig into real estate. But, Julie, I know you agree that like real estate is an awesome financial vehicle. The wealth generating power is awesome. And that's why I want to share the message of like, everybody can get into this to some degree or another. Like even if you're just a passive investor, it can really help you and your family financially. So get into it. But why do we want to do that? I mean, why do we want to have financial success? Why do we want to build wealth? And it's almost always for everybody, like to have more time for the things that matter. And for me and a lot of my guests, and I know for you, Julie, like my faith, my walk with Christ is number one. And then my family is number two, my wife and my two young kids. And so I want to get into real estate because I know, we're going to benefit financially. But the reason I want to benefit financially is because I want to have time freedom to spend time with God, pursuing a relationship with Christ, and pursuing relationships with my wife and kids. So on my podcast, we do focus on that a little bit too. We dig into like, hey, how, real estate, you've done this, you've done that, you've done well financially. Hey, how's it actually been for your family and for your walk with Christ? And we kind of dig into that a little bit, because if it's good financially, but it's not good anywhere else, then it's really not good, right? So yeah. So that's kind of what we dig into a little bit. We cover those parts kind of toward the end. I'm like, okay. And then maybe like some advice that they have, hey, not just real estate advice, but what about advice? Because I know I can tell from you, Julie, and a lot of us that get in this space, we are very driven people. God has given that to us. It's a gift, and it can benefit us, and it can also be a negative, right? Like we can get wrapped up in it. We can be consumed by our work, and then we're not leaving time, to get into the Word, time to pursue our spouse and our kids and stuff like that. So my guests will often give us, good recommendations of how to keep that balance and keep your priorities straight.
I'll tell you, when that balance gets out of whack, my home feels it. There's an old adage like, ain't mama happy, ain't nobody happy. But my entire life, if I am not walking with God 100%, I turn into Cruella, and it's not pretty for anybody around me. It's a train wreck.
Absolutely.
So having that. Yeah. So I know for me, a lot of people have this experience of a miracle morning, and it's kind of this newer version of things for a lot of people. For me, that's been a practice that has been part of my life, where it's like, dang, if I don't wake up and open my Bible and pray, I'm probably not going to be in the right mindset to tackle my day and to respond in an appropriate way. And I like, man, I can respond in really not nice ways. So it's a really important part of my day. And I can tell if I miss it. I'm wondering, if there's a way that you weave that in to jumpstart, your day, and that could be different for everybody.
Yeah, I get up really early. I mean, often it's 4:30 in the morning when I get up. My wife's up by 5, and so we're both early risers. The kids are up at 6:45, so we have a lot, plenty of time in the morning. And for sure, I'm trying to spend time with God, get into the Word, get in the right mindset. Spend some quiet time. It's funny though, Julie. That started when I was in corporate America. So when I was working a lot and trying to climb the corporate ladder. I was trying so hard to not take away so much time from my family. The people that I was working with, I mean, they worked really hard, and I was not even. I was not willing to be like, hey, I'm the first one in, last one out. That meant like giving up all this time with my family. So I wasn't willing to do that, but I still wanted to work just as hard as everybody else, and I'm very competitive, and I want to succeed and all those things. So I started getting up at 4:30 in the morning because I figured, well, if I get up at 4:30 in the morning, kids don't get up till 6:45. I've got a good 2 hours to get work in. So I started then. But like you were just saying, it was not a great time, and I felt God calling me to something different. And this is actually what led me into real estate because I was up plenty early. I mean, and I would tell my buddies that from church, and I'm like, it's really bad that I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I still can't find time in the morning to spend with God. And that's how it was when I was in the corporate job because I just felt like I had so much to do. There was so much going on. So I would get up really early, but it was all for work. Well, when I left corporate America, got into real estate, now I had that time, but I decided to keep getting up that early. But now, have some quiet time. My wife and she likes to get out and walk. So I'll get quiet time, get my prayer time. She's out kind of doing her quiet time. And then we end up walking together a lot of mornings. That's been a very sweet time for us. So yeah, I think that's essential. I mean, everybody, Christians and non-Christians talk about needing quiet time. I mean,
Yeah.
whether you call it yoga, whether, getting your mind right, getting centered. To me, we do all need that. People are identifying that correctly. Um, that God gave us that, so yeah, whether you believe or in Christ or not, I think we all need that. So yeah, I try very hard to get that in the morning like you do.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is gravitating towards that because there's so many pressures in the world, and you can only absorb so many pressures before you implode and they just take you down, and people don't want to go down. And so a lot of people are looking out for, okay, how can I be successful and be whole and complete? And like you were saying, like,
Yeah.
what is the point of having all the time or the money? Rod Cleef, I really adore Rod because he
Yeah.
lost everything,
Yep.
and he tells everybody, hey, you what's the point in being successful if you lose your house and you lose your family and you lose everything? Like,
Yep.
it doesn't make no points at all on that. So
Yep.
it's really important to find a way to be balanced in everything. Super
Absolutely.
balanced. So how did you go from, I mean, I don't normally ask these questions, but this is just super fun because you and I haven't had all of these conversations. And sometimes I get fragments of people's stories as I get to
Uh-huh.
know them. But, how did you go from corporate America into multifamily? Were you just see a corporate America, or was there an epiphany?
There was a little bit of an epiphany. So I'm a physical therapist by trade. So when I got out of school, went to school for 7 years, forever, get out, physical therapy, doing kind of the normal outpatient physical therapy thing. That was actually not the best schedule. So I got into home health physical therapy. That's an amazing schedule. You get to make your own schedule. I mean, I probably wasn't even working 40 hours a week. So my wife loved it. We had a young daughter at the time. It's great for family. I was bored out of my mind. I mean, I was not challenged, not fulfilled. I'm like, this is terrible. Well, the company I was actually doing home health for, I didn't even really realize this, but they were actually a startup company. It was a staffing company. So they brought me in as the clinical director. I got more and more involved in the office, started realizing I like business. Like, I mean, how do you know what you want to do when you get out of high school? I had no idea. So I got into physical therapy. I was actually going to pre-med, got into physical therapy. And I liked it. It fits me pretty well. Like athletics, stuff like that, so it fit me really. And I like working with people. But I realized pretty quickly, like, I like business. I like numbers. I like building something. So I got to the point with this company where I was doing no physical therapy at all. my wife's like, why'd you go to school for 7 years? What are you doing?
We
And,
endured, we had the debt. What are you
yeah,
doing?
right, right. Now, I was making significantly more in this corporate side than I could make as a physical therapist. So it made, it didn't like make total, not make sense. Hey, you went to school. Well, I was doing fine. Um, but that's how I got into corporate America. And again, I realized then, like, this is what I like doing. I like numbers. I like building things. I like business. I like, just with this company, I was always running the numbers and like, where should we put our, our resources? Where should we do here? Where should we go? I mean, I was between Cincinnati, Columbus, and Dayton, running therapists all over. So realized that that's what I like. I did kind of have an epiphany. A friend, kind of the rich dad, poor dad epiphany. A friend, we were kind of both getting disgruntled a little bit. I was there for 3 years, and we had another child, so we had two young kids at home. My wife stays home full time. For some people, you think like, oh, that must mean like working a lot of hours is easy because your wife, is home and has total flexibility. So if you don't have any flexibility, it's fine. That's like not the case at all. I don't think, because when your wife's at home full time, she wants you home way more than if she got a break from the kids and was working full time, right? I mean,
there is so much truth. I was at home with our kids when they were young.
okay.
I
Yeah,
can totally hear the truth in that. Yes, mamas need a break.
Oh my goodness.
They
So
need
yeah, I
help.
mean, when I told her, hey, I'll be home by 5:15 and I get home at 5:30, to me that's the same thing. To her it was like, what have you done to me?
Five
You were
hours
supposed
has
to be home at
passed.
5:15. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it seemed like that. So I definitely felt some pressure there. And I wasn't whole either. Like you were saying, like I just said before, I'm getting up at 4:30 and I still have no time to get in the word and to really spend some quiet time with God because I've got so much work to do. So I knew I needed to change too. A friend kind of turned me on to real estate a little bit, ended up reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So then, Julie, what I decided was like, because I met with a friend that was in real estate. He was in real estate full time, had about 45 units, just managing himself, kind of just the small time stuff like a lot of people do and doing really well. Single families, duplexes, triplexes, stuff like that. And he said, well, Lee, if you want to get into this, is there any way you could work from home or work part time so that, you're still working? And really, there wasn't a way to do that with my job. It was like all or nothing. Well, then I started to realize, well, if I go back to home health physical therapy, I can do that. So that's exactly what I did. So I left corporate, went back to home health physical therapy again, where tons of flexibility, good stable income, not setting the world on fire, bored out of my mind, right? Not fulfilled, not challenged, but it's like, yeah, but I'm going to get challenged and be fulfilled with real estate.
Okay,
That's what I've done.
this is really, really powerful because a lot of people, and I've heard this in a multiple of sources, like you have this opportunity where you can go and you could have stayed in corporate America and you could have grown and you could have made a whole lot more money and all of that, right? We could have seen, it's like that, the choose your own adventure books, like
Yeah,
you
sure.
could have gone that route. But sometimes we get to this fork in the road where we have to say, what do I really want? And sometimes we like, the world would see it as, oh, we're downgrading, like you were
Yeah.
you're probably getting a pay cut, you're
Yeah. Big
downgrading
pay
your
cut.
position, like, and a lot of people don't want to take that step and say, no, I'm going to become less over here so that I can grow and become more in this area over here. It takes so much humility to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a big pay cut. But my wife and I are try to be pretty humble living wise. So we were living well below our means. So I don't want to act like, oh, we, had to live in a tiny house or anything. I mean, we were fine, but we were, but yeah, it was about a 30%, 25 to 30% pay cut.
But I think a lot of times people's egos get in their way.
Yeah.
And so
mine,
even
yeah,
if
I
it's
struggle
not,
with it.
I don't get to drive this car, do X, Y, or Z. It's a matter
Yep.
of, especially for ambitious people, it's like,
Yes.
oh, I have to put the ego aside for a second.
Absolutely. Yes. Very hard. God is working on that with me still. There's some pride issues. Yep.
I don't know anything about that at all. So you make this transition into multifamily, and now you're transitioning. How is your wife feeling about all of this? Where's she at?
Yeah, we weren't in a great place while I was doing the corporate America thing. She was just drowning, at home, and so she wasn't happy. She wasn't happy with the way she was acting, even toward me. I mean, it's one of those things like I'm mad at you, and I'm mad that I'm mad at you, I
Right.
don't want to be mad at you. I want, I want to be happy, but like, I feel like this lifestyle is doing this to me and to us. And I just, she's like, I don't know a way out of this. So when I left, yeah, she was thrilled. I mean, when I went back to home health, and actually I didn't do my first deal for a year. So, I mean, I was working full time, but I felt like I took a break for a year because just very relaxed. I mean, and it was awesome. I mean, you know, something I assume you probably agree with, Julie. When I was at corporate America, we had a session one time where we were talking about past struggles, and we were really just it was like a group of leaders. I was kind of one of the leaders of the company when we would do the quarterly retreats. I would get to go, with the top 15, 16 people in the company or whatever. And one time in one of those meetings, we're having a just kind of trying to get closer to each other. So we were talking about a past struggle. Well, I've lived a pretty blessed life and have good parents and have not had struggles. So I actually shared that, like, guys, actually right now is a struggle for me. Like being in corporate America and like working these hours and my wife being home with young kids is actually one of the toughest times I've been through. And this girl that I worked with, great girl, crushes it, still with this company, crushing it. Um, she shared like advice that I feel like is so common in corporate America. And she's like, Lee, the way I try to think about it is like, my son's really young right now and your kids are young. And like, I just think like I want to work really hard now and make enough money. So like then when they get older and they're like having sporting events, then I can like scale it back and go to those sporting events. And I said, thank you for the advice. But like I knew right then that's like the opposite of what I feel like God is calling me to. And really, honestly, all of us, when your kids are young, that is such an important time. And they may not remember it, but I mean, you may know better than me, but there's like studies out there that show like by the age of 3, kids have like developed such a big part of their personality and their character. So my wife and my wife could tell you all this stuff. Like she's all into this. So it's like, yeah, you're losing this really precious time with our kids. So that first year, it was just an incredible blessing to be home, and it was very difficult. Like you said, for somebody that's really ambitious, for somebody that's competitive, for somebody that struggles with pride a little bit, just doing home health and being home all the time, it was so needed and it was such a blessing. I had to keep reminding myself that because it was a challenge for
It's a it,
me as far as a career.
it's a really unique challenge, and it comes with its upside also. But I've gone back and forth between being at home as a stay-at-home mom to being a working mom to now being this hybrid kind of mom,
Mhm.
and it's really neat how, I mean, like, I feel God just weaves this path in and out of my life, and it's great. But I mean, right now we're just enjoying the fact that we can go to, do school in the morning and then go on these walks mid morning. I was telling my husband as we worked out just this morning, I said, our kids don't know it yet, but when they get older, they're going to realize that these mid morning family walks are not normal.
Right.
you know,
I
but
know.
it's a
What a blessing.
special
Yeah.
time to be able to talk to each other, and they say things that as you're walking, people say and do things that you don't normally say and do necessarily.
Yeah.
The kids are in this freedom and everything, and being able to put an imprint into their life and have those relationships so that when they're older, those are established and we have this good relationship to fall back on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's
Yeah, I hear
vital.
you. Yeah. So you're into multifamily, like just kind of looking at a timeline here, and now you're like me, where it's like, oh, let's go charge,
Yes.
like this huge thing. And my husband is the one that said, okay, go for it, but let's just slow down a bit. And for me, that
Hmm.
was just like holding back a racehorse. Like, what do you mean slow down? I know what I want. I want to go for it full blast. So
Yep.
we had some of this little interesting tension that was turned out to be really good. Can you tell a little bit about the transition for you and your wife in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, she's definitely more a conservative person. God made her like more risk adverse than me for sure. I mean, I'm a complete gambler. Like, let's go for it. If we lose it all, no big deal. We'll start over again. So we're very different. Like, I mean, and she was even raised that way. I mean, her parents, nothing but a savings account. I mean, just pay off your mortgage and just save. And my parents kind of like that as well. I mean, I didn't have entrepreneurs in my family and like real estate investors by any means, but they're definitely more like, hey, failing is okay. Like just take risks, fail, have fun, that kind of stuff. So in every sense of the word, like we're definitely coming at it from two different angles. So it was definitely a challenge. Just getting into real estate in general just felt very risky to her. So she has definitely like what I mean. I was saying this before, but I feel like she has always been slowing me down, and she feels like I'm just dragging her like 60 miles an hour, out the car door. Just so like yeah, we're very different. And God made us that way, and yet He brought us together. So we've spent, this time, like you and your husband, figuring out how that works. And like you said, it's actually, I mean, we're 3 years into the investing journey now, so now I can say it more than before for sure. But like,
Right.
it's been a really neat thing. It's been this beautiful thing that God put together because the first thing we did was we flipped a house, and that felt less risky for my wife because we were in a position where if that went horribly wrong, we could afford the mortgage on that house. So I told her, just this is a good practice other people say to do is like do the worst case scenario thing. Like, and really, what is the worst case scenario, right? Like, because my wife's worst case scenario is we end up on the streets, our kids are begging for food. And, it's like, is that really an actual scenario?
But
Could
it
that
is
actually happen?
it is so powerful to actually
Yeah.
walk through as a couple to actually because
Yes.
every like if you are in this business together, the worst case scenario, especially for men and women, is usually really different and maybe a little more dramatic for one more than the
Yes.
other.
And that's exactly how it was for us. So we did that. So, I was like, hey, look at the numbers here. Look at what I'm making. Because I still had a full-time job at the time, right? She's a nurse and she was working PRN at the time. So here's our income. We can afford both mortgages. So that's actually worst case scenario. So, okay, she could grasp that. So we did the flip, didn't go very well just because of how much time it consumed. So it was almost like I was back in corporate America toward the end of the flip. So, but we made good money, exited that or whatever. And so yeah, I'm like slowly building trust with her like that. And she always says believable time plus believable behavior equals trust. And so that's what she keeps telling
Ooh,
me. It's
that's
like,
good.
yeah, like you've got to show me believable behavior, so you got to like prove it to me. We got to do this. But like also it just takes time. Like I no
Right.
matter what I say to her, and she's not a numbers person, so I can lay these numbers like, do you not see that this, like, whatever it is, like
Look
something
at the
crazy, Julie, like
spreadsheets. It
well,
speaks
if
to
I'm
you,
like
right?
25% cash on cash return, it's like that means nothing to me. It means nothing. Like, how much are you spending again? How much of our money are you
Yeah.
putting at risk? That's what matters, and it's a comfort. So it's definitely been just over time, and believable behavior. She has seen it, and what's been so cool is like as much as I've felt so constrained at times, like she's slowing me down. I should, because we're competitive. I'm looking at other people. Look what he's doing. Look what Julie's doing. She's
They're
already doing
closing
this.
deals and they're doing
Yeah,
this. Wait, I just
I
did
could
this
be doing
last
that,
night.
but my wife won't let me. You know, but what's been so neat, we both know people that want to get into real estate, maybe get into flipping first, because that seems like the easy entry point, and that's what I did. And sometimes people get caught up in that and they just go full blown at it. And that's probably what I would have done. And they end up flipping 20, 30 houses and then realize, wow, this is just another job. And maybe they get into some small multifamilies and then they end up in big multifamilies. And I always knew like that's where I wanted to go, but I started in flips because my wife slowed me down so much. I only did one flip. And so I would have liked to do more in a way, but not toward my end goal. I wouldn't have. Like at the time, I would have, but now I don't miss that I haven't done more flips. I'm like, no, that's not what I wanted to do. So because she slowed me down and constantly made me like, let's think about this, let's talk about this, let's move a little slower. I only waste, and for me, it would have been wasting my time because I'm really trying to get to multifamily. I only wasted my time with one flip, and that's all thanks to my wife, really. So
It's
yeah, that's just kind of an example of how we've been able to work together.
and it's interesting because you could some people would take that as a moment and it would be um, a point of resentment
Yes.
against their spouse or partner
Yeah.
because it could be a business partner or anything like right because business partnerships face this all the time and so
Yeah.
anyhow I'm just thinking when you are willing to receive somebody for where they are and with my husband where he wants me to slow down and show him, help him understand where now not so much. Now there is this trust and it's like, okay, just go. But, there is that point and it's difficult, but it has saved us a lot. And like
Yeah.
you were saying, hey, it saved you from having to figure out where you wanted to go after 30
Yeah.
houses in how
Right.
many years? You know?
Yep. Right. Exactly. Yeah. It was one flip, 1 year, and on to the next step because I moved so much slower because she's like constantly, let's talk about this. Let's slow down. Let's think about this. And in that time, I'm like, okay, yeah, flipping is not where it's at. And that's not what we want to do. So let's move on to the next step toward our actual goal.
Yes. So where
Yeah.
has that, so at this point in your investing journey, uh, how much trust do you have? Is she at the point where I have a friend and she just tells her husband go and buy whatever? You know, she's like, oh,
I'm not there yet.
I know he knows what he's doing. He can go do it.
Yeah, that's like maybe level 5 trust. Maybe I'm like at level 3 or something. I don't know. Um, Definitely, she's to the point where, and this was all along, where she doesn't have to understand the numbers, and understand for me to do it. She trusts that I know what I'm doing. She just still wants to talk about it. She still wants to know what we're doing. And, she's had some really good wisdom in this. And I think you kind of just hit on it there, Julie. Like, you can have resentment. And if I can't talk to her about it, I'm going to go talk to somebody else about it. And so she's always had this wisdom, like, no, that's not going to be how it, like, this isn't going to be a wedge between us or a gap between us. This is, if you're in it, I'm in it. So I want to know about it. I want to talk to you about it because I know you like talking about it. Even if I don't like it, we are doing this together because we're together in everything.
Yeah.
So we still talk about everything. I have a lot of trust from her. It's just, now I'm one. Here's the problem. Every time I get to a point where she really trusts me, then it's time for me to go like to the next mountain.
Right.
So, right.
We were at 16. We were at a flip, honey.
Yes.
Now we're at a single family. Do a 16-plex. Hey,
Yep.
honey, how about 50 to 80 units now?
Exactly. So she's like, she's like, if you just wanted to do another 16 unit, that would be so easy. I would be like, what? That sounds great. That's easy. We already did one. Do another one. But for me, it's like, yeah, but I already did one. So I want a 50 unit. Exactly. So she's like, okay, that's a lot more numbers and more investors. So it's just like, there's just always new things for her to just feel comfortable with and gain trust with. So yeah, it's my own fault. I just keep pushing her past her limit. She gets a new limit, and then I want to go to the next limit. So,
It sounds like a child, actually. Okay,
yeah.
always testing the boundaries. No,
Yes.
but it's interesting is that for both of you are actually, and I know that my husband and I face this. It's a test for both people in the
Yes.
partnership and in the marriage in this case, like because for her the push is going up, scaling, trying something new, and for you the test is, can I show restraint and keep everything under control as I teach and guide and show how to go about doing this.
Yes. Right. Absolutely.
It
Yep.
takes
That's the balance.
oh gosh, it takes a lot. I joke around that my husband lets me live in the clouds, but he holds my ankles down. So, it's like,
uh,
but that took a long time for us to develop and to learn. And I used to have a lot of resentment, and I had to work past that because, like,
mhm.
actually, there's a lot of prudence. I would totally jump off the edge of the cliff and think that I could fly, and maybe the wings aren't fully developed yet. So
Yes.
he keeps me from making some mistakes that would be very costly. And I
Absolutely.
now that we have some experience behind us in life, we've been married for quite some time. It's a matter of I trust him. So it's like that trust going both ways. Like,
Yeah.
okay, he trusts me, but I also trust that he'll help me be very successful as
Mm-hmm.
I listen to him. So
Yes. I know what you're talking. Yeah. Absolutely.
so powerful. Wow. Well, I can't believe time has flown by, Lee.
Yes. I haven't been paying attention.
I am wondering if you have any final gems for any of our listeners that you would leave behind for them.
Just speaking in real estate, what I think what God has helped me to understand for somebody like me. Well, this kind of goes for people that are like me and people that aren't. I think, Julie, like, to get into real estate and to be successful in real estate investing, I think you need like two things, and sometimes this comes between two partners, like you and I have talked about. I think you need the 10x rule, like Grant Cardone talks about, and then I think you also need the compound effect from Darren Hardy. And the reason I say it is, like, if you can't dream big like you and I can, then you're not going to get into real estate. You're not going to ever imagine owning more than just a single family home and working a job and having a 401k. So you've got to be able to expand your mind, and maybe that comes through your partner. So, your husband and my wife, they're not dreamers. They can't do the 10X. So, we do that for them.
Right.
Maybe you need a partner. Maybe you need a partner that can do that. The partner that's more the visionary, but you've got to have that to get into real estate and to go big. But then the other thing that I think that I know I struggle with is the 10X, I didn't even read the book. I don't need to. I'm a 10X guy. You know what I mean? Like, I've got that part down.
I don't get that sense at all.
So what I need is the compound effect. So Darren Hardy in his compound effect talks about like, hey, you can have these big dreams, but that big dream, realistically, let's say like that's a year away. What are the 1,000 little things you need to do between now and when that takes off? And the difficult part about this is, and this is definitely true, I know anybody that's in it, like you would know, like with an apartment building, the growth curve is an exponential one. And an exponential growth curve grows very little for so long. It feels like you're making no progress. You're doing all these little things. Nothing's happening. You're doing a podcast. You do it for a year. Still nobody's listening. You're making all these offers. You're underwriting all these deals. Nothing's happening. What you don't realize, and what Darren, Hardy tells you in the comment effect is like, actually you're building up so much momentum. It's almost like a coiled spring or something. Like you're doing all these things. And when it takes off, you get this exponential growth. And that's like when you finally get an apartment building. Like you've done nothing, but then you close on a 100-unit apartment building. Holy smokes, it's like you just bought 100 houses, like all at once, right? So it's like you've done nothing. You've seen no progress, like nothing tangible, and then it takes off. And I think if you want to be successful in real estate, you have to have that mindset. That's something I struggle with. God, has given me my wife to help me with that. She's very much like, even my podcast for me, it's like, just get some guests, have them on and talk. And she's like, but do you have kind of all these things in order? And you really do have to pay attention to some of the details and get some things in order, or you're not going to see that exponential growth. And you've got to stick with it. For me, that's hard as well. I want to, jump to something where that's why flipping's fun. You get in there, you go after it, you sell it, it's quick, and you get to see this reward. You get the money right away once you sell. But again, that's not what I want to do. I want to do the apartment stuff. And the apartment stuff is it's a long hunt, right? Long time. And so, that's what I would suggest to people, that you really work on that. If you really want to be successful, you've got to be committed in the long run and know that you may not see any, substantial, what feels like progress and see a win for a long time. And I think, Julie, for me, that's why I like listening to podcasts like yours, just to hear you and your guests talk about that, because I have to keep reminding myself, like, because I'll just, day to day, I'm like, nothing's happening. I'm not doing it. Why haven't I closed an apartment building? It's been 10 months. And I need to hear, from people like you and your guests that, yep, that's how it goes. Like you actually are doing it. So yeah, I think that's difficult for a lot of people that get into real estate investing, because they're people like you and I that are the dreamers and want to go big. And you've got to be ready that it's going to take a long time sometimes.
That is absolutely powerful advice. It's so funny and so timely, because literally last night I've been working on a project for the business, and anyway, it's just taking its toll on me at the moment. And I was lamenting to my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, and talking about, I'm doing this and this on this particular project, and I just feel like I'm going nowhere. And he reminded me exactly of that. He's like, no, you are, total compound effect. But
yes,
it's so important, especially for the typical type A, ambitious, overachiever kind of person that is oftentimes driven to this niche, is that we're used to just like instant results.
Absolutely.
And this isn't instant. So if you don't have your game plan set up for 5 years out, what am I doing in year 1, year 2 to set myself up for year 5, year 10 and 15 and beyond? Like, so powerful. That is great advice.
Yeah, I've needed it. It's advice for myself, but some other people might benefit too.
I guarantee I already benefited. This is great. Thank you. Lee, what is the best way for people to connect up with you, and also to see what current offerings Threefold might have?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in learning more, I put out a podcast that we mentioned before, Threefold Real Estate Investing. I've got a website. It's just threefoldrei.com. jump on there. You can, find out more about us. We've got a phone number there that pops up. You can put in your email address and be part of our mailing list. We're always sending out something every week, just trying to educate people on multifamily, educate people on what we're doing, so you can get comfortable to maybe do some investing yourself on your own, or maybe invest with us. So info@threefoldrei.com. That's the email. So yeah, email us, jump on our website, get your email in there, get on our mailing list, or call us. The number's there on the website as well.
I'm gonna give a little plug that I was reminded of recently that I think is a really great reminder. And I don't know that everyone listening to this podcast understands, but if you are interested in jumping into multifamily investing, and you're interested in doing that in a passive way as a passive investor, you have to have a relationship in many instances with an investor before you can jump into that deal. So I always encourage people, because you never know who's going to connect up really well, who's going to resonate. So if Lee is resonating with you, it's really important that you pop over and give your information, and maybe have a 30-minute conversation, so that when he has an opportunity, you can participate in that deal. So there are actual security guidelines that we as multifamily investors have to follow. And it's really important that if you want to be part of any investment offering, that you have that relationship before it comes around. So make sure you jump on it, jump over to his website if you're like, wow, Lee, it sounds like my kind of person to get to know to invest with.
Yeah, thanks for that, Julie.
Yeah, I think it's a really good. I think this is a reminder that a lot of people, it's easily forgotten and swept under the rug, especially for us as we're going about our business. It's just, oh yeah, that's just how it goes. But for people that are just getting into this, and they're listening, and maybe they listen more to the mindset episodes, and they're catching this one, then they're like, oh yeah, oh, and by the way, there aren't 100 spaces available, everybody. So there are limited spaces, and we're not just saying that. So lots of good things to keep in mind. Lee, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your honesty and what you're doing with your business. Thanks for joining us on Ask Me How I Know.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Julie. It's been a blessing.
Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. This episode was brought to you by Three Keys Investments. They are dedicated to helping people like you, you, my awesome listeners, develop passive income and legacy wealth through multifamily investing. Feel free to check out their website, threekeysinvestments.com, to see if there's an offering that will help your portfolio grow and meet all of your needs. If you haven't already rated, reviewed, subscribed, liked, all of those bells and whistles, I would be absolutely honored if you would do that for Ask Me How I Know. Thanks again, and go make it a great day.